Some of London's finest restaurants are in Soho's Charlotte Street. Tim O'Leary's customers come by cab and in fine cars, so who had come to visit him in this one? He was never to find out. The wreck just sat there for 5 whole weeks. The copper on the beat didn't seem wildly interested. The wreck went on, sitting there, and sitting, and sitting. Some people got some pleasure out of it. Some of them even took bits of it away, but not enough for Mr. O'Leary. Outside his door, it was also in his hair and on his nerves. Nobody could deliver direct to his restaurant, either goods or customers. And sightseers brought no business. The dustmen weren't best pleased either at having to hump Mr. O'Leary's mini bins that much further. And so the weeks went by. A little story, hardly worth the telling if Mr. O'Leary's spot of bother was unique, but it isn't. All over the country, hundreds of derelict cars are being dumped by the roadside every week, and it's going to get worse. By 1970, there may be 700,000 cars a year being junked. What's being done? The police really only come into it if they think there's an obstruction or suspect theft. It's a matter for the local authority, and some take their responsibilities seriously. Croydon even has its own breaking and bailing yard, which is beginning to pay for itself. Other authorities have arrangements with private scrapyards. Trouble is, most of them charge a towing away fee, and many derelict car owners can't or won't pay up. Hence this, and hence some very angry citizens. This wreck had lain here for weeks. Within 24 hours of the slogan's appearing, it was taken away and another with it. Coincidence, of course. Yet the old car that nobody wants to know is big business. Big? Well, behind this clothesline is one of Britain's biggest industries. It's called the waste recovery trade, and the scrap metal section alone earns over £84 million a year. It can be carried on by a couple of men at the side of a road, or in a small yard like this, where the totters, rag and bone men, bring the proceeds of their house-to-house collections. This is probably the most efficient operation of the lot. Metal, rags, bones, glass, paper, everything is sorted and resold, nothing wasted. Or in a huge scrapyard like this one at Waltham Cross, believed to be Europe's biggest. If you can get your old car here, they'll take it without charge, but they can't afford to collect it for nothing, although its final scrap value may be as much as £8. Why? Well, it's the processing involved. First, the car has to be fired, all the wood and upholstery burnt out, all the non-ferrous metals, copper tubing and the like, disposed of. Newer cars are a different proposition. They'll even buy those for the value of the spares. Then the wreck has to be cut into manageable sections, more labor costs. The cut sections then have to be transported to the crusher. Here, at last, machinery takes over, squashing and bashing the scrap into uniform bales ready for the journey to the steelworks. The whole long, expensive process could be fully automated. They do it in the States, they do it in Japan, but the capital costs are enormous and few in Britain have been willing or able to meet them. But there are signs of change, and here is one of them. It's the world's largest car crusher, designed in America, but built in Britain, now being demonstrated for the first time. It'll travel the country, call at the dumping grounds, and crush up to 1,000 cars a week, sometimes 2 at a time. Here it's having a go at an entire car, wheels, engine and all. But it won't normally do this. In any case, the resulting mixture would be almost useless for scrap. The derelicts will still have to be burnt and stripped, so much of the problem will remain unsolved. Fully automated car disposal is still in the future, in Britain anyway. Go down almost any country lane and you'll realize cars aren't the only things people throw away. Any country lover will tear his hair at this sight, and it's only too distressingly familiar. As people get richer, they buy more and throw away more. But there's really no need to throw it here. Every council has a duty to dispose of all household refuse. But for the big stuff, many of them charge, and some householders would rather dump than stump up. And then there's fly tipping, the illegal disposal of rubble. Builders pay contractors to cart the stuff away, but some drivers will dump their loads anywhere rather than drive perhaps 20 miles to an official tip. They're hard to catch. In Brent, where we are now, the council spends £2,000 a year fencing open land and cleaning up after fly tippers. Yet there have been only 2 prosecutions in 2 years. Total fines £5, hardly enough to pay for the broken pavements. But every householder has a dumping problem. In Birmingham, he's lucky. One of these gleaming monsters arrives at the drop of a postcard. They're specially designed to cope with a 3-piece suite, the old fridge, the lot, as well as dealing with the normal household refuse. Yes, they'll take the old clock as well, and they won't charge a penny piece for any of it. Of course, you pay for it on the rates, but that doesn't seem quite the same. And no one is tempted to throw their junk into someone else's garden to avoid paying a charge. At the depot, the big pieces go into the incinerator. Let's hope Granny hasn't sewn her savings into the old armchair. But should it all be burnt? Couldn't part at least be salvaged? The metal, this time the old fridge, follows the familiar process and may in time become part of a new fridge. It'll also be part of the £100,000 a year Birmingham earns from selling its salvage. But what about all this? 350 tons daily in this one depot alone. Some of it gets sorted, but the rest burnt. Britain only salvages a quarter of her waste paper, yet that's the annual equivalent of a forest the size of Holland. There's nothing that can't be salvaged and used again. The tin coating on these cans is worth £1,000 a ton, but only 1 or 2 firms exist who can separate it, so it's lost. The problem is double-edged. Finding the space to take the ever-increasing lumber of our civilization, now come to such a pitch that a hole in the ground is a very saleable property, and finding new methods of salvage. The scrapyards, the totters, the gypsies do the best they can, but it's not enough. Too much literally goes down the drain or up in smoke. For paradoxically, our waste is a real part of our wealth.
This Allegro is the best foreign car I've ever owned.
It's got to hold 5 people in comfort, mind, and do 0 to 60 in about 9 seconds.
Well, even they got to wash the petrol, haven't they?
And I want a 5-speed gearbox, adjustable steering wheel, not as extras. And I must be able to lock all the doors at the flick of a switch.
Slow down, Ethel, there isn't a fire.
And 5 doors and reclining seats. Can't help me, of course, can you?
The new Rover 3500, sir.
Leyland Cars. Austin, MG, Triumph, Mini, Jaguar, Daimler, Princess, Morris, Rover. All with super cover. Great cars and a great deal more.
Here's the most talked about car in the world today. The revolutionary new Triumph Herald. The Triumph Herald has so many wonderful features. Slim pillars give terrific all-round vision for easier driving and easier parking. In fact, you only need a mere 35 inches clearance to drive straight out from a parking line. The Triumph Herald turns in only 25 feet. No car, not even the midgets, can beat it for maneuverability. The steering wheel is adjustable to suit every driver, and the seats can be set in 36 different positions. The Triumph Herald features a one-piece front assembly that swings clear to give easy access to the engine and front suspension. There's a separate chassis for strength and safety, and you can say goodbye to greasing worries because normal greasing is eliminated. For a new experience in motoring, test drive the revolutionary Triumph Herald.
On your last trip, did you discover what the Earth people eat? They eat a great many of these. They peel them with their metal knives, boil them for 20 of their minutes. Then they smash them all to bits. They are clearly a most primitive people.
For mash, get smash.
Isn't she a beauty? Who'd guess it's a do-it-yourself sports car? Buy the components, get a pal or two to lend a hand, and you'll be in the 100-mile-an-hour class. Like to see how it's done? Here are the parts laid out as delivered by the factory. Assembly is no difficulty at all to any man who can handle ordinary tools. A twin carburetor, a 1500cc engine, and a fiberglass body give a power plus lightness combination that makes for super performance. Self-assembling saves the purchaser £210. But I say, look here, don't take all night over it. Right, give it a road test. What a glorious feeling, just for a few hours' work. And why not enter for Le Mans? That's at Earl's Court, where the covers come off the brand new roadsters at the motor show. This is the year when women will have the say in what goes. And this new-look Sunbeam Rapier certainly is a goer. And ladies, perhaps for the first time, the choice is yours. If hubby doesn't want to give up those pleasant pints, you're going to do a lot of driving. A Hillman Stiletto might be the perfect vehicle for ferrying the old man back from the local. Or how about the AC Fastback? Put your foot down on this and he'll be sober in a flash. Breathalyzers be blown. He'll have seen the red light. Honorable little engine goes like a bomb lady in the new Honda Mini. Very cheap, very Japanese. But homebred from the Vauxhall stable, there's the handsome new Victor. New shape, new engine. A real good looker, made by man with woman in mind. From MG, the MGC, a pretty two-seater that packs a lot of power in 6 cylinders. That may not mean a great deal to the new queens of the road, but in export markets where they can open the throttle wide, it's a boon. The same goes for the Triumph TR5. It's a new motor with a brand new engine that does away with carburetors and uses a fuel injection system. In the super luxury class, the car that's a sure hit, the Rolls-Royce, here in convertible form. It's got everything, including a whopping price tag of £10,500. But capping even that at £11,000 plus is the beautiful Lamborghini Marzol prototype. Top speed is 210. It's a car that's got everything, from a pretty girl to a 4-litre engine. Still in the dream car bracket, it's a Piranha, a hand-built, one-only, perfect piece of motorcar designed by Nunzio Bertoni. You name it, the Piranha's got it. Advice to match performance in a car that looks just as good as it is. Certainly not a winner for looks is the Ford electric commuter car. But it certainly makes up for its plain Jane appearance in performance. It's just about the most ideal town runabout that ever came off the drawing board. It's a four-seater that'll do 40 and do away with three-point turns. What's more, there's only two pedals, go and stop. Couldn't be easier for the wife, especially when things start to look like this for the man of the house. That's the time to move over and let the missus manipulate the motor. No, this time it's not a touch of the DTs. The headlights really are having a look to see what's going on. It's the new Citroën with a phantom hand at the wheel. Anyway, it's sound advice not to drink and then drive. If you do, things may look like this. But for languoring in luxury with the wife at the wheel, there's the new Ford Cortina Super 68, the medium-sized car with the executive suite interior. Think of the accessory, and it's there to be found, except, of course, for a cocktail cabinet. But then he's probably had enough anyway. So let the lady get on with it. He'll drink, she'll drive. That's the way.
Triumph TR6. We have already demonstrated how the British used to advantage its responsive rack and pinion steering, its powerful disc brakes, its big six-cylinder engine. And now we'd like to demonstrate what we British feel is the best way to use the TR6's new 5 miles per hour impact safety bumpers. In England, we strive to miss a wall.
Jackie Stewart, the world champion race driver, tests the new Ford Cortina. On a twisting mountain bend, he tries Cortina's new wide track handling, the new suspension, the responsive rack and pinion steering. Jackie agrees the new Cortina has more car between the wheels. Now Jackie Stewart and the Stewart family try the new Ford Taunus. Mrs. Stewart likes the quiet ride, the interior roominess. Jackie appreciates the crisp, compact exterior, the new overhead cam engine. They all agree the new Ford Taunus is a most generous car.
Action Man!
And his transport command. Tough, realistic models specially designed for Action Man. They're all action. Just look for the Action Man Transport Command badge. It tells you they're the real thing. You can send off for a free workshop accessories kit by collecting the stars with every pack.
Action Man!
Transport Command. Only from Palatoy.
Triumph Spitfire. 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 Triumph Spitfire.
This is the new Triumph GT6. And if you think it's just another fastback, you're wrong. It's the new fastback that's also a true sports car. With big six-cylinder power, 4-speed stick shift, disc brakes, bucket seats, and the tight cornering, quick steering feeling you get only with a genuine sports car. The Triumph GT6 Fastback looks like, drives like a true sports car. Because it is. People tell us it's the car that sells itself. See the new Triumph GT6 Fastback at your Triumph dealer. You'll find it alongside the Triumph Spitfire, 2000 sedan, and TR4A.
What a jump! Eagles
Eagle's riding the amazing Sky Cycle. That gyro power sends him over 100 feet at top speed. Loop-de-loop, and he's not through yet. Into the dragster. Evil's super sprint car with built-in drag chute to slow him down. What a hope! And now, the Sky Cycle. That daredevil death-defying supersonic skyplane on wheels. And here he is on the super cool chopper bike with the power that can really rip. He's sensational. He's Evil Knievel. He's a knockout. He's ideal.
Happiness is a cigar called Hamlet, the mild cigar.
Talking about ancient models, here's one that doesn't seem to have stood the ravages of time too well. Apologies if you've got one just like it, but with all due respect, it is a little battered. Mind you, 1931, when this was probably the hottest thing on four wheels, is a long time ago. And there aren't many cars today you can buy for a tenner or so. Even so, with a snippet like that, you wouldn't expect this sort of thing to happen. Some people do this the way others light their cigars with £5 notes, but we can assure you that these chaps couldn't be more level-headed. In fact, they're carrying out a do-it-yourself scheme for making the proverbial silk purse from the sow's ear, transforming a tiny old Austin 7 into a sleek and powerful sports car in easy stages. To save this preliminary bother, it's possible sometimes to buy just the engine and chassis for as little as 50 bob. The time this transformation takes depends obviously on the number of enthusiasts you can get to help and what time you have to spare. In other words, it can be done in a week or it can take 3 months. On this model, the old chassis was cleaned and modifications carried out, including lowered suspension front and rear, raked steering column with wedge or universal joint, and wheels 2 inches lower. After this preparation, and again it all depends on how particular you are, in one operation the new single-part body goes on. A remarkable innovation developed from the comparatively recent discovery of the values of resin-bonded glass fiber. The new body is many times tougher than steel, doesn't rust or deteriorate, and of course doesn't have to be sprayed. By the time accessories have been added, the total cost of the transformation is less than £150, a mere 1/5 or 1/6 of the cost of a new model. This, motoring enthusiasts can designer Larry Falcon, who started this do-it-yourself idea. The performance of this little sports job is as good as she looks. Speeds well up in the 70s, depending of course on how much the engine's tuned up, and this at 50 miles to the gallon. Just think what this means. It means that in future you needn't be scared to let even your wife borrow your car. If she smashes it up, well, she can build you a new one.
Britain has a new car to be proud of. It's the Hillman Avenger. At an uneaten test track, the car, on which high export hopes have been placed, showed how it can stand up to any amount of punishment on the toughest road conditions. The car comes in 3 versions, Deluxe, Super and Gramblers. Roots call the new models the car for the 70s. Low petrol consumption and high top speed are 2 of its merits. Inbuilt safety is another. The Avenger is a 4-door, 5-seater with sporty lines which will be introduced next month into 50 overseas markets.
Experts measure how well a car corners in terms of Gs. In 1973, in Car and Driver magazine, the Triumph Spitfire got a score of... Yes, the Spitfire gives you 0.87 Gs for a little more than 3 Gs. And that wasn't even testing under ideal Spitfire conditions.
The Triumph Spitfire not only goes from 0 to 60 very quickly, it also goes from 60 to 0 very quickly. As often as you want it to.
Life has many things to offer. One of them is the Triumph Spitfire. To the callow, impatient youth, this machine offers the polish of responsibility. To the man who's lived long and well, it offers a respite from boredom. Yes, life has many things to offer. Get one.
I'm a secret lemonade drinker. Always, always. I'm trying to give it up, but it's one of those nights. Always, always, always lemonade. I'm a secret lemonade drinker. Always, always, always lemonade. Always, 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 always lemonade.
Disappearing, taking with them a beauty and excitement all but lost in the world today. This species, though, is not an animal, but an automobile. The open roadster, the Triumph Spitfire to be precise, classically beautiful and race-bred. Save this endangered species. Buy one. Triumph Spitfire from the land of British racing green.
Sun, sun, let's put our tops down and ride with the wind in our hair. We're gonna have fun if we follow the sun where I don't care. 'Cause I've always liked the sunshine, always light the sky. Sun, sun, let's put our tops down.
Have fun in the sun in a topless MG or Triumph. They're waiting for you now at your British Leyland sports car dealer.
It's one of the world's busiest thoroughfares, Oxford Street, London. And like many another in Britain's noisy, fume-filled towns and cities, a street of adventure where the pedestrian competes with the motor car for room to move. It's jam today and even more jam tomorrow as the traffic builds up. Every year in Britain, there are 350,000 road casualties, 3 out of 4 in built-up areas. And every year, too, more and more space is taken by cars, with streets where people live turned into car parks interfering with essential services. And it's not only the dustman who suffers. The vehicles of Britain cause huge delays, the cost of which has been worked out at over £500 million a year. The scrap heaps tell their story of a world made ugly as well as dangerous by the motor car. And finding a way to live with it means nothing less than a revolution in the layout of our cities, an end to street systems as we know them. This report points the way. It's the result of a 3-year study of the long-term problem of traffic in towns and cities, led by Professor Buchanan, who once called Oxford Street the most uncivilized street in Europe. And here's its vision of the Oxford Street of tomorrow, with traffic and pedestrians on different levels. The main idea, to build cities with districts where traffic won't be allowed at all. Today, 11 million cars are on the roads. By 1970, there'll be 18 million. Inside 40 years, 40 million. To keep them all moving means motorways and flyovers and underpasses. It means traffic surveys, bold ideas and big spending. It means our towns and cities must be redesigned and rebuilt over the next 50 years, with their centres on 2 and even 3 levels, and traffic and pedestrians kept strictly apart. With its main network roads under the present surface of the city, London would be transformed to give traffic-free areas on a new ground level over the existing one. But London won't be rebuilt in a day. And for now, it must meet the challenge of the car with one-way systems like this at Mansion House. Or this on Albert Bridge. 2-way traffic most of the day, changing to 1-way in the peak hours. Into London in the morning, out of London in the evening. It's an idea called tidal flow. Britain hasn't the space to meet her traffic problems with vast intersections on the American scale. Intersections which cover acres of land. But traffic flow projects are underway, and others will follow, at a cost of at least £10,000 million over the next half-century. Here's how Liverpool plans to cope with the car, with a new city centre designed to handle the amount of traffic expected in 1985. Old streets and buildings will go, to make way for a centre where traffic and people will be kept apart. They're even planning a second Mersey tunnel, as the present one will have reached its full capacity by 1970. And the new Mersey sound looks like being that of the demolition squads preparing the way for the motor age Liverpool, with flyovers and underpasses and parking space for 30,000 cars. But even then, motorists who like to park all day will be discouraged. In some cities like Norwich, the conflict between pedestrian and motor car can't be eased just by sweeping away the old and rebuilding. For Norwich has a centre of architectural value, reflecting centuries of history. Fine old churches, the castle, and buildings that take you back to medieval times. Here are streets that echo the sounds of the 15th century, rather than the revving engines of the mid-20th. Streets built to last. Streets nobody wants to see bulldozed to make room for the Rolls and the Mini. Streets made for a population that went about on foot. Here the pedestrian and the car are closer to each other, and there's less room for both. The city's population is rising, and so is the number of cars. On a weekday, between 40 and 50,000 vehicles enter the old city, and many park on its streets. Norwich has its special problems, but hundreds of other towns and cities have one thing in common: too many cars, not enough space. those sixpenny symbols of strife, the parking meters, are no real answer to traffic congestion. Other ways of persuading motorists to keep out of city centres are being thought out. There's talk of pricing road space for journeys and even of allowing motorists to enter some areas only if they have a special licence. But who would qualify for a licence? That's anybody's guess. Whatever is tried, one thing is clear. Tomorrow's motorist will have to find his level. For even with multi-level garages like this fully automatic 6-floor park for more than 450 cars in London, there'll still be more cars trying to enter our cities than there's room for. But what about this? A new town expressly designed for the motor car age, on the basis that every family living in it will own a car. A town where traffic is concentrated on motorway-type roads built for free flow and safety. A town of peaceful coexistence between motorist and pedestrian. It's Cumbernauld in Scotland, and its planners have found a way of getting over some of the problems of a car-owning community. Here's one of the housing areas where no car can enter and where children can play without risk of being run over. And for the 70,000 people who will live in Cumbernauld, there'll be special pedestrian routes, footways with a built-in row of bricks that lead to the town centre and shops. It's what the planners call a second-generation new town, and it's going up to relieve overcrowding in Glasgow. Its centre is on a deck above the approach road, with shops and business premises on the deck. Yet even as Cumbernauld grows and its builders work on the town that's meant to meet the impact of the motor car, it may have been overtaken in the high-speed drive into tomorrow. For some experts are already saying that its basis of one car to one family isn't enough, that many families in the future will own 2 cars. If the motor car is not to become our master, Britain has to face a revolution as drastic in its own way as the Industrial Revolution of nearly 200 years ago. It'll be costly. It'll mean a big upheaval. But unless we're prepared to restrict the number of cars coming onto the roads, there's no other way.